thank you all for joining us here today. We are so excited for our guest speaker. We have Foram Mehta here with us. She's a content strategist and also does a bit of journalism and blogging. So really thrilled. We're going to let her share a little bit about her background, and then she's also open to answer all of your questions at the end as well. So I will go ahead and turn things over to her.
Thanks, Tori. Hi, thank you guys so much for having me. This is super exciting. When Tori reached out to me, I was like, oh, I can't believe somebody wants to know about my career. I feel like I've had such a crazy journey here, and so this is really humbling for me to be able to share a little bit with you about my background. Let me just share my screen. Of course, this is always that part where it's like so hard for people to share their screens. You know what? It's not letting me do it. Give me a sec. Joy, can I actually send this over to you?
Yep, not a problem.
Not like, it's just not even showing me anything that I can share right now.
Yeah, not a problem.
Okay, just share a good deal. Cool. Well, in the meantime, I can just get started. There's not too much on those screens that you need to read. So I'm Foram. I am a help and education content strategist at Facebook. So what that means is I cover two product areas, and I write content for the Business Help Center. It's not super exciting work. It's definitely something that is really, really critical to Facebook's kind of like business strategy. I don't know how much you guys have been able to explore all of the different tools that Facebook has. A lot of times we are familiar with Instagram and Facebook, and it turns out there's a lot of different tools that Facebook has for people to really optimize their advertising strategy. So I help work in the business education organization to write help center content. Here we are. Cool. So I'm just on that first slide. Thank you. And so a little bit what I do in addition to write content is I work on content strategy. A lot of my role involves understanding, I have to have a really good expertise about the products that I cover, and then understand how to create educational content for the Help Center for our advertisers. And the Business Help Center is mostly read by small business owners. So that takes a little bit of additional understanding of, who our audience is. It's not people like Coca-Cola who are reading our content. It's people like, everyday folks who are running these mom and pop businesses. So my parents have a small business. So for me, it's a really great way to kind of marry those two pieces of my background. And I work a lot cross-functionally with product and marketing partners. So if you're wondering, like, well, what about this has to do with marketing? I have a background in marketing. I actually made a leap into education, business education, which is what I'm doing now. And I have to say, I really enjoy it, but my background in marketing has really, really helped me thus far. So I'll talk a little bit about that as we get into it. But and then on the side, I'm a freelance journalist and an editor. This is really what my passion is, to be perfectly honest. And I think that that's totally okay to say that digital marketing is not like what, gets you up in the morning and keeps you excited. Like, my job at Facebook helps me pay the bills, and it helps me hone and practice the skills that I need to do the work that I really love, which is to write essays, to write reported features. And I'm always just looking for new opportunities to continue writing. I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided that, what would make me the happiest is to really become a great writer. And there's just so many opportunities to do that. And marketing is kind of one of the places where I've been able to do that. So let's go to the next slide. A little bit how I got here. I actually graduated with a bachelor's in journalism and broadcast news. I was going to be a reporter. My dream job was to have my own talk show. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna become a reporter. I'm gonna get discovered. I had a really grand plan about all that. I didn't end up going into news. I had some health issues after around the time that I was in college and I graduated. And those health issues meant that I couldn't drive. When I couldn't drive, I couldn't I couldn't be a news reporter, because news reporters, if you don't know, have to be able to drive their own trucks and film their own stories and edit their own stories. So it was like a very weird challenge for me that I just couldn't get around. And so I had to pivot, and I took a lot of odd writing jobs. I was sitting at home, and this was 2011. And I want to say at the time that I had to kind of make this pivot in my career, content marketing was just starting out. Like, I didn't know what it was. I hadn't learned anything about it in school. I didn't even know how to be a freelancer. And I would say that was the biggest gap in my education, is as a graduate of journalism, not one professor talked to me about freelancing. And this is a point that I made, I try to really drive home to people now, because it took me so many years to really to accept that being a freelancer is a job. And it does not mean you're unemployed. For so many years, I was just doing like odd end jobs, writing a little bit of this, writing a little bit of that, and I considered myself unemployed. And then I look back and I'm like, there were so few periods of my life since I graduated college where I was actually unemployed. I was actually working a lot. And so I want to just really drive that point home, that if you are unemployed because you don't have a full-time job right now, that does not mean you are unemployed. Like, you can find work, and when you brand yourself as a freelancer, things can totally turn around for you, because that's what I did. At some point I was like, I'm a full-time freelancer, and no one can really challenge you on that. So I ended up in content marketing, because content marketing was a new field at this time, and people wanted to get journalists on board because they were writers, they knew how to create content. The big caveat here was that nobody understood what content marketing was. And I have to say, like 10 years later, I have found so few people, as in my hiring managers, who really truly understand what content marketing is. And this is like my first warning to you, that if you take a job in digital marketing, because everybody here is learning like the actual skills, and I was just listening to you guys earlier about developing strategies and stuff. And it's just so important, because you're probably going to walk into a job where you're smarter than your manager, and just be comfortable with like knowing that, and knowing that some days it's going to get really frustrating, because I learned everything I know today on the job. And I spent years and years and years hoping I was going to find a manager who's going to teach me, like what marketing is, and I was going to learn all these great skills from them. Nobody understands it. And that's really saddening, but it's also really empowering, because that means that if you go out there and you learn everything, and you're like in the field, and you understand, you develop an expertise, you can really pitch yourself as an expert in the field. And don't shy away from using that term, because everybody uses that term, and there's a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to like learning something that you may not have thought you were going to do with your life. Like, I didn't think I was going to be a content marketer, and at some point I was pitching myself as a content marketing expert, because why not? Like, I had run startup programs, I had like developed startup programs for these startups, and at some point I was like, I am an expert because I know more than you. And so I just have to say, like, over the last 10 years, I've had over 20 freelance and full-time jobs. Like, I counted them in my head one day, and I was like, that's insane. But I have developed so much experience in that time. And not all of it was easy. I left a number of positions because I was like, it's really hard for me to work for and with people who are unwilling to listen, unwilling to give me a voice at the table when I know what I'm talking about. Like, I'm the one that's actually doing the work. I'm managing writers, I'm hiring people, I'm building content programs, I'm like writing everything. And then I'm doing the data as well. Like, that's what startups are. And I was working with a lot of people who were like, hey, I want you to develop a blog. Okay, cool, I did it. And then what would happen is they didn't understand what that blog was going to accomplish for the business. And that has happened to me so many times where I realized that. And so over time, I learned how to become self-reliant, independent. I learned how to freelance full-time, and I also learned how to ask a really good question. So when people said to me, hey, I want you to come in, I want you to build me BuzzFeed. That's not a lie. Like someone actually told me to, can you come in and build me like a BuzzFeed type blog? And I said, okay, cool, I can do that. But what is it going to accomplish for your business? And they couldn't answer my questions. So I said, okay, cool, this is not going to be the job for me. So that's just something that I have learned over time. Let's go to the next slide.
Awesome. Quick question for you. Just curious, as far as getting started in the world of freelance, what would your advice be to, folks that are, if they're finishing up the program right now, they're maybe looking for a full-time job, but open to taking on freelance just to build up their experience.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what's the best way to go about it? Like, where would one even search to find these right type of roles?
I think I cover a little bit that in the next slide. So let's go there and let me see what answers I put in there. Because I just wanted to make sure that what I was going to tell you is what I actually put into a slide. I wasn't going to be talking against myself. Freelance positions are all over the place. I would say they're on job boards. I found them on Craigslist. I found them on AngelList is a really fantastic place for startup jobs. And I have to say that a lot of startup jobs are freelance. And all that means is it's not a full-time job. They're not going to give you benefits, and you can kind of call your own shots. And so AngelList is a really, really, really great place for you to find freelance jobs. And then it really just depends. I've really tapped into my communities. Like on Facebook, there's a ton of professional groups that you can join, and people are always saying, hey, you know what? I'm looking for somebody to like do social for me for 15 hours a week. And it's just, it's a person who owns like a little boutique. It's so you just have to keep your eyes and ears open. For me, because I was writing and I was a journalist, I had a lot of the work that I found in content marketing kind of overlapped with these like journalism boards that I was looking at, writing boards, and so if you're really interested in kind of the content marketing side, I would say go look at where like journalists are looking for jobs, because inevitably you'll find some work there. Other than that, I think like there is no one singular place to find freelance work. There's so many, and you don't want to limit yourself to just thinking like, oh, I'm going to find a job on the job board, because a lot of people are looking at those job boards too. And so you have to consider the competition you're up against. And so I guess like that side leads me into kind of talking about getting the job that you want. My first piece of advice here is just start small and work your way up. Like the benefit in working in startups, I have to say they've given me a lot. It's not something that I would ever go back to at this point in my life, but they've given me a lot of experience. Startups give you that opportunity to lead, wear multiple hats, and build such great experience. Like you're going to be expected to do a lot of work, but also if and when you decide to leave, you can say you did so much. And that's so impressive to somebody who's looking for that. And because people want to know that you know how to do the job. Like it's not about the title, it's about your actual portfolio and like what you can speak to. And I have like continuing to learn is just so important. The fact that this program exists, that everyone's here, is so exciting for me to see, because it makes me hopeful that when I have to work with people who are actually in digital marketing, like they're gonna know what they're talking about. These programs didn't exist like 5 or 6 years ago, and people were just like talking out of their rear ends, to be perfectly honest. And it's like hard to work with people who don't know what they're talking about, but they get a job for whatever reason, and then they're your manager, and you're like, but I know what I'm talking about because I use social media, I run ads, I do this, I'm reading the SEO blogs. Like, so continue to learn and continue to like be confident that you know what you're talking about, because this field is constantly changing, and so it's not going to stay the same tomorrow. Like, you just have to continue building your experience. And as far as freelancing, like again, look for the part-time and temporary gigs. Like, if it's something that's 15 hours a week, great, because that means you're like open to do other stuff. Continue to look for a full-time job while you have an actual job that's paying the bills, that's giving you experience. And it's not like you don't have to commit to hoping that it's going to turn into something full-time. Over time, I changed my outlook in thinking that I'm going to take this job because it's a 3-month gig, because it's a nice finite period of time where I get to practice my skills, do something great, and then I'll leave, and that's great. And pitch your services. Like, I think what I learned towards like the end of my official marketing career is that I started writing proposals. Like, for example, I worked with a photographer who actually took my engagement pictures, and she happened to be like from my university. And I started talking to her, and I had just quit my full-time job, and I was like, hey, I noticed that could actually do a lot with your social. Have you ever considered hiring a social media consultant? Like, I can help you with that. And she was open to it. And so I wrote her up a proposal. I said, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. This is the period of time that we'll work together. And this is my rate. And so know your rate. Like, don't, when somebody comes and asks you like, hey, how much do you charge? Don't be caught off guard to be like, I don't know, because that means if they know that you don't know your rate, they will lowball you 100% of the time. This field is notorious for paying people not enough for what they deserve. It's a really hard job to do social media, to do content marketing, and people love to underpay, especially if you don't know what you're worth. And my biggest piece of advice, and I have to say, like, today is an example of this, is nurture your relationships. Like, Tori and I worked together because she helped me get a job at Facebook last year. And, like, we just stayed in touch, and like, this is a great opportunity for me to talk to people about this type of work. I love doing this. I have found most of my jobs because people I like work with, was friends with. One of my doctors, actually, I was sitting in an appointment with my doctor, and he was working on a book, and he was like, hey, like, what are you up to these days? And I said, nothing, like, I'm looking for work. And he was like, well, I've been trying to finish this book for years. Are you interested? Like, yeah, of course, and he was willing to pay me whatever I wanted. And that doctor and I have continued to work together for the last 3 or 4 years. Every time I've been out of work, I'll email him and I'll be like, hey, like, you working on anything? And he's like, I was just thinking about you. Like, I was just going to email you. He has kept me employed for, like, at least partially employed for years. And this continues to, like, work in my favor, is just touching base with people that I know and just being like, hey, like, what are you up to? People will remember you if you have like a good relationship with them. And in return, when you have the opportunity to help somebody, help them, because you never know when, like, that's going to come back to you. And from experience, it will 100% come back to you. So, like, this is just something I can't even stress enough.
Foram, I just want to, like, highlight this, and thank you so much for mentioning this, because this is something that we always focus when we're working with individuals, especially focused on their job search, is the idea of equating networking to karma, right? So I'm focusing on your network on the basis of quality, not just quantity. Yes, there's a power of numbers, but the way you achieve those numbers is so much greater and more important. So
totally. I actually don't even like networking. Like, I've it's superficial. Like, people know what you're, like, trying to do, and it feels uncomfortable. It's like speed dating. You're like, oh, this is weird. I'd rather meet somebody in a natural environment. But yeah, like, I feel like when I'm not even expecting it, I end up meeting somebody who's doing something that interests me. And as a marketer, you can bring value to everybody's life that you meet. And that's the thing that, like, I always, when I was in between jobs, I would always think about that. If I met, like, a small business owner, I'd be like, hey, anybody doing your social media? Anybody writing your blog? And I've done that so many times. And so many times, like, somebody has hired me just to do, like, 10 hours of work a week. But that's how you build your experience, and that's how you get your portfolio up. Like, that type of, I mean, I can't even, like, I wish I could just spend like an hour talking about all of that, but I can't stress it enough. So I want to talk a little bit about building your brand. Excuse me. Build a website today. Like, I only got my website up 3 years ago. I had most of my clips on, like, contently.com and, just, like, on LinkedIn. I was really good about putting up my clips on LinkedIn and keeping my LinkedIn up to date. But since I've built a website, and people, like, I have had people read my articles, for example, and then go to my website and then either like send me a message and be like, hey, I read your article, I loved it. Or now what's happening is because my SEO has like built up a little bit over the last couple of years, I have people coming to me to my website to be like, hey, I'm hiring for this role. Are you interested? That is something that's like just starting to pay off for me. Like somebody I think recently from what's that company, King Games, like the Candy Crush company. They messaged me the other day and was like, I'm looking to hire somebody. And I was like, this is so cool. Like I didn't expect that, but that's because my tagline is a journalist, editor, content developer. And I've just kind of peppered that throughout my entire website. And I kept that story really, really cohesive. This is also that's like really important. My friend and I this summer, we launched this initiative to help run these profile audits. Basically, she's a digital strategist, and what we did was help do these audits for free for people who are looking for jobs. And what she did on her end was she would Google people and say, do you know like what your social media looks like? You'd be shocked. Like you just Google yourself and just realize like everybody will Google, like hiring managers Google you, people that you're going to work with as like a consultant they'll Google you, and you need to have that stuff like really spick and span. It doesn't have to be all professional, but you can't have like stuff that you're embarrassed about, right, on your social media. So I would just recommend that you do that today, and use your social media profiles professionally. Like at least have the same message across your Twitter, your social, your Instagram, like so that way if anytime anybody goes anywhere and anytime they Google you, like if you Google me today, all my stuff says at least journalist, editor, content developer. That's that's what I sell myself with. And again, like being a part of communities is so important. Join some professional groups. Like Facebook has a million of them. I'm in a number of what's called binders groups. I found out about these a couple of years ago. It was a happenstance, but these groups are so mutually helpful. Like this group is full of writers and editors. And the other day I was like trying to figure out where to pitch an article that I was been trying to write for like a year. And I posted in this group, and I had 10 people be like, hey, pitch this publication, here's the name of this editor. And I pitched an editor that somebody told me to pitch, and the article got accepted the next day. Like it's, and again, I also take the time to help people in this group. Like it's not just about giving, or it's not just about taking, like you have to give. But also it's so nice for me to feel not alone when I'm like out there, doing my thing, knowing that there's so many other people doing it. And then the last resource here is it's a little less known. It's called Help a Reporter Out. And I can send Tori the link after this. It's the shortened version is HARO. It's a free newsletter that connects journalists and sources. Sources just means like experts in their own field. So you can sign up for free as a source, and just know that you can speak to digital marketing topics. You can speak to, like we all have like different identities. And what happens is when like a journalist is looking for a source, often they'll use this and they'll put out a query. I've done this a million times. So I'll say, hey, I'm writing a story about digital marketing, or the best digital marketing tips, looking to speak to digital marketers. And what you can do is you get this newsletter, it's by category, and then you can respond with a pitch and say, hey, like I'm this person, this is why, you should quote me, blah, blah, blah. Here's my website. The more, the more put together you are, the more likely they're going to quote you. And then they will, they're going to get a bunch of pitches, but like the better you look, the better your answer is, the more chance you have that they'll quote you. And if you get quoted, you're likely to get a backlink. And you want to get those backlinks to your website. Like that's really, really important. So this is like table stakes, right? Like just sign up for HARO after this. It's easy and it's free. Let's go to the next slide. I'm just going to touch on this super quick because I reviewed over like 100 resumes this summer, and these are the top things that kept coming up when I was reviewing them. And I just want to say, like, reviewing resumes for me now today is really full circle, because 5 years ago I felt like I didn't know how to write a resume. And then I realized one day, I worked with a career coach a couple of years ago, and she was just like she worked in finance. I was like, what makes her more qualified to write a good resume than me? And it wasn't that she was any more qualified. It was just that she was really good at getting jobs. And it took me a minute to realize, like, I've had over 20 jobs in my life. Like, I'm pretty good at getting a job. And so I'm pretty good at writing a resume. Let me just be, help people do this. Keep it to one page. Unless you're a doctor or a grad student, or like there's just a very few exceptions, you do not use present tense for jobs that you currently work in. So, leading a program, working with such and such. I look at that. Use past tense for previous jobs. This is a really big mistake that people make commonly, and it just makes it look messy. That's all it is. Proofread. Oh my God, like I've even found mistakes in my resume, and I feel so embarrassed as a writer. I'm like, it happens, but if someone catches a mistake in your resume, think about, like, you have like 20 resumes to look at and somebody misspelled something. Like, that's just an easy way to eliminate them. That's all it is. And make really good use of your real estate. Like, expand those margins, in every direction. Don't use a picture. Don't get super cute with it. Like, keep it simple. Have you can use colors in like your headers, but don't make it like all like fun and crazy. I know Google has like a million resume templates. Most of them are really bad. Just keep it super simple and professional. And then have a master resume. Oh my God, I can't stress this enough. A master resume is a resume that's like 10 pages long, because it has all the experience that you've ever worked in. And this is where you're going to continue update it regularly. I just updated mine last week because I started taking on like a new initiative at Facebook, and I was like, let me put it in here before I forget. So when you have a job that you want to apply to, everything is ready to go. All you have to do is duplicate it, and then you customize it for that job. So for example, for me, like, I've applied as an editor for publications, but I've also applied for marketing jobs. And like, those two are not, I don't want to put my marketing jobs on my editor resume, and vice versa. But it takes a lot of time to edit your resume when you're looking for that job. Time is of the essence, of course. So have a master resume. When you're ready to apply for a job, you just, duplicate it, delete what you don't need, and then you send it. It's just, that's going to make like your job application strategy so much better. And it's going to make it stronger, because you're gonna know what you did when you did it, as opposed to trying to remember, like, what were my click-through rates for that email? Like, I don't remember now because I'm not working on it. So yeah, if you don't have a master resume, like, please do that today, because it's gonna pay off for you. And I think that's it as far as like what I had to talk about.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you for the Yeah. Love all the tips, especially on resumes. But while we're on that topic, curious, when you are reviewing a resume, what's the first thing you look at? Like, where's the first place that your eyes go to?
The first thing I look at is how long it is. Like, if it's longer than one page, I'm like, because this is the thing, right? Like, I've had over 20 jobs. It's not like it's hard. It is hard. The more you get into your career, you're like, how do I keep this to one page? Not every job needs to have like 6 bullet points. Actually, most of your jobs, like your older jobs, can be summarized in just a few bullet points. Spend most of the time on like your most recent work, and you just, not everything needs to go on there. That's all it is, And so it's so hard to review a stack of resumes, and most of them are like longer than one page. Like, I'm just not going to do it. And I hate eliminating people for stuff like that, but it's just how it is. There's just so many people looking for jobs, and when like you make mistakes like this, it's like, I hate it. I hate doing that, but it just is what it is.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Another quick question for you on resumes. What would you recommend for folks that maybe they're newer in the digital marketing space? If we don't have a ton of projects to put on it, what's the best way to highlight the skill set and capabilities?
Well, everybody here like uses social media, right? Like, that's because that's just that's like a given. If you are in digital marketing, like you're doing something in your personal life, you should talk about it. Like, and I'm sure, and especially in programs like this, I imagine you guys have like case studies or like projects that you work on. Like, that stuff matters. I can give you an example of like a program that I was a content manager at before Facebook. I was working with a number of writers. We were looking for a social media person. And I mean, I was just really saddened by the level of quality that we had like coming in. We had a lot of younger people, and I was like, okay, these Gen Zers, like they're really good at social media. They're better than like the millennial. I'm sure we're gonna get some really good candidates. And I would look them up afterwards and be like, you have like 10,000 followers. Why didn't you talk about that? You came in here, you just didn't say anything to me. You haven't said anything to say on your resume. I like looked you up. And that's really disappointing, because when there's stuff that you can talk about in your personal life, like you can say, hey, I've built up a following of 10,000 followers by doing X, Y, and Z. I have my own social media strategy. Like, why can't, say that? Like, I developed a social media strategy for my own personal following, and I grew my following by 200% in 6 months. Like, numbers. I mean, when I see numbers, I'm so impressed, because I'm like, okay, you get it. You get what what's going to be important when you actually get this job, is that you're going to need to report on your growth and like think about the stats. That type of thinking is really important to see on a resume. If somebody doesn't know how to even think that way, then I'm like, well, you're just about posting, and that's not the same thing. I know digital marketing expands beyond social media too. So just think about like what you can talk to or talk about in your resume that you've done, because you've done stuff. You just have to think about it. And you guys are marketers, so like market yourself, right? Like marketing is all about spinning. I hate this. It's all about spinning the truth a little bit. Be honest, don't get caught in a lie, because that's even worse. But like, just know that you can make yourself look really good by just using like some key phrases and some strategies. Like, that's what you're gonna have to do anyway. So do it for yourself first.
Yeah, and similar to Tori's first question in regards to resumes, I would like to know, what is your approach or strategy or behavior when you check or review candidates' LinkedIn profiles? Because by nature, they are more extensive, they're longer. Mm-hmm. So what areas do you tend to focus on the most?
Again, I'm take this for what you will, because I'm a writer. And so this for me is a little bit more important, but like, I look for like a really good description. Talk in the first person, right? Like there's a lot of, there's like a school of thought for, talking in third person and talking in first person. It doesn't matter. It is more personal if you talk in the first person, talk about yourself, write a good description, talk about what you do, why you do, and why you do it well. I mean, just don't, like, in this field, right? Like, especially when you're behind a computer, just get rid of that imposter syndrome and just like talk yourself up, because there is so much competition out there that if you don't, somebody else is doing it. And that's all. At the end of the day, like, that's what I've learned, is if I'm not going to talk myself up, like, somebody else is going to get this job. And so I look at this description, I look at tense, right? Like little stuff, because it tells me too that you have taken the time to make this look good. And I want to see that, like, of all social profiles, especially when applying for jobs and reviewing candidates, I look at LinkedIn, because I'm like, are you paying attention? This is also your resume. If you're going to have one, have a good picture. It doesn't need to be a professional headshot. Like, if you look at mine is my husband took it on portrait mode. Like, I was like, that's fine. It looks good, right? Like, it's a headshot. It works. But as far as like your headline, don't feel like it needs to be defined by the job that you have. Mine does not say I work at Facebook in my headline, because I don't want to be defined by working at Facebook for the rest of my life. I may not have this job next year, but I will, like, people still find me because they're still looking for Facebook people and they still try to recruit me. But I'm a journalist, I'm an editor, and I'm a content developer. Like, that for me is inclusive of everything that I do. So just really give it some thought and make sure all the pieces are in place. That's it. That's really what I look at.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I have a quick question,
Sure.
Lindsay Bradley. So whenever you have people who are essentially pivoting into a new career, like my career has mostly been, well, my degree is in journalism, interestingly enough, as well. And I was a newspaper reporter for about a year, and then I've done some freelance writing for magazines and things like that. But most of my professional career is in actually wardrobe styling.
Okay.
So I kind of decided that I kind of wanted to marry my wardrobe styling and image creation with a social media marketing career. So if someone is looking to pivot, what do you normally look for? It's like, okay, you've got somebody who has all this experience in something else, and a little bit of experience in this that kind of relates to what your position is. So if, like for me, my resume is at least, it's like about 2 pages, maybe 1.5 pages, because I'm trying to show the experience that I've had. So what would help make you think, okay, well, this person could be a good candidate for this position with a huge background, right?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question, because I actually had I was victim to this literally for most of my career. Like I feel like only the confidence that I've developed in what I do now has only developed in the last 3 or 4 years, because I've started, one, you have to change your mentality about the like feeling that, okay, well, if I did this, I won't be able to do this. Like knowing that you can pivot for me helped a lot, because it then got me thinking about how I could tell a cohesive story. Everything is about telling a story, right? So for you example, you have a background in journalism, you have a background in wardrobe styling. Like I'm like what you have a creative background in wardrobe styling, right? Like, so you, like, it doesn't have to be talking about like, you don't have to say, I was a wardrobe stylist and a journalist, blah, blah, blah. You can take like the skills that you use in those jobs. And I think that's what's always really important, is to make sure that if you're applying for a digital marketing job, that when I read your resume, those skills pop out at me. Like, it's not about what you did, or it's not about the job title you have, but the skills you used in those jobs that made you successful. And it's really important then again for your resume, like each role that you had has to stick to like the same themes, like, right? Like it has to be about being creative, knowing your client, which is what you have to do if you're a wardrobe stylist. You have to know your clients. You have to be you have to work cross-functionally. Like, talk about your soft skills. This is something else that people don't, I think, emphasize enough and think about, but soft skills are really important, right? Like they need to know that you know how to work with people. You're a journalist, so that means you know how to write and you know how to tell a good story. Like all this stuff, when you start thinking about it and you start pulling out the little bits and pieces and then you put it on a resume and you have like these key phrases, it all falls into place. And then you look at it and you're like, oh damn, like this is a really good, like this actually makes a lot of sense, right? Like I think the best part about being a marketer is your own work and your own resume is like a project in and of itself. You're always having to figure out, how do I market myself so that I am the perfect person for every job? And like, that's a skill that you have, is learning how to tell the right story. That's all marketing is. And it's about creating value. Aside from creating, a story, it's about creating value. And so you have to pitch yourself as like the most valuable person. And you can do it. Like, it's just, it'll take some time to just like think about it. But that's where the master resume really helps, is when you word dump everything that you ever did in your job as a wardrobe stylist. Write it all down. Like, don't think about, oh, this, this is not important. Because once you have it in front of you, and then you need to apply for a certain job, you're like, hey, I can take this phrase and this phrase and this phrase, and then you like tweak it, and most of your work is done, right? Like it's a lot easier when you have all of it done to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Quick question for you as far as networking. So one thing that we always recommend is part of the branding, right? Branding ourselves on LinkedIn and doing the awkward networking of having to reach out and send messages.
Yeah.
But unfortunately in this day and age, right, we're also spammed with messages that we don't always get quick responses. What catches your attention? If somebody were to add you on LinkedIn or send you a message, what type of message or what questions could somebody ask for you to be like, yeah, I'll give them the time of day, or I'll hop on a call with them? What would entice you?
So this has happened to me a couple of times, and it's funny because like when you work at Facebook, everybody wants to talk to you, and I'm like, wow, it's so funny how much clout like having the name, and to me, it's like it's a double-edged sword because I'm like, I had all the same skill set before I worked at Facebook, but now you want to talk to me. But I get it, like that makes sense. You want to talk to people who have a job that you want to have. It's hard for me to get messages like random LinkedIn requests, no message. I don't respond to those anymore. And I'm like, oh wow, I used to do this all the time. I used to be like, hopefully if they see I'm a journalist, like they'll just and if when I was applying for editor roles, like they'll just accept my LinkedIn request. I didn't really think about it. And most of those people didn't accept my request. If they do though, write them a message. Like if there's somebody that you're like, I'm just going to connect with them, and they accept, don't just like leave it hanging because they're not going to talk to you. Go talk to them and be like, hey, thank you so much for connecting. Like, I love what you do, or I'm so interested in what you do. Like, find something in their LinkedIn profile that you can refer to. So one that says that you actually care about them and what they do. And then just have a clear ask, right? Like I would say asking for a phone call is a lot for somebody you don't know, but just kind of striking up a conversation with them first. Like again, like it has to be genuine, right? Because LinkedIn is made for a place. Like people understand that on LinkedIn, people send random requests, but that doesn't mean that people are more likely to accept them. So I had somebody a couple of months ago, actually. She was another South Asian woman. And she messaged me, she asked me some questions, and I was like more than happy to answer these questions for her. This person was a little bit eager in the sense that I gave her a little bit of advice, and then she was like, hey, cool, I'm going to come to you later for advice. And I was like, okay, I would have loved if you had asked me if it's okay to come, because I'm just like, I don't have the time to mentor you. I don't know you, right? Like I'm happy to help. I'm always happy to help. So somebody messaged me today and said, Foram, I love this article that you wrote. Like, I'm just curious about XYZ. It has to be a small enough ask that like I can respond to it in a message and you'll also get value from it. Don't ask for the world. Just have like a message, be personal, and make sure that it is like worth that person's time, right? So I think that LinkedIn, again, though, that's not the thing that I recommend. Like, it's hard, it's not genuine. The best way to develop relationships is to join a group where people are in, like, talking about stuff, talking about their career. If there's like, again, Facebook groups are great. Talk to like people that you work with right now, like see what they're doing, and those relationships will naturally develop. But if you do want to talk to somebody on LinkedIn, just make sure the message is genuine and you're not asking for the world. That's it.
Awesome. I love it. That's great advice. I agree. I think it's important if we send messages when we connect with people, but keep it short and sweet. Nobody wants to read a storybook on their LinkedIn message. I have to say I'm guilty of that too. Somebody sends me a LinkedIn message with 5 questions. I'm like, yikes, I don't have time to get to this right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't ask for pick 1 or 2 simple questions. Definitely there.
Yeah. And it's always, you can get a lot of value by asking something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like what somebody's asked me in the past, just hey, how did you get not how did you get your start, but like, I love this article, like how long have you been writing, like something really easy that I can be like, oh yeah, I've been writing for like 10-15 years, blah blah blah, and then they can now respond to that. And then now we're just in a conversation, right? Like, it doesn't feel like you want a job from me. It feels like you want to just get to know me, and then if I know you, I always keep people in mind. My favorite thing to do in life is to help people find a job, because I have had such a hard time finding work, like steady work in my life, that for me, if I can help somebody find work, and I have done that, like in the past when a freelance gig for me was ending, like I connected, a friend to the person that I was working for and be like, hey, this person's fantastic. Like, I think you should talk to them. And that's worked out, right? Like that, don't underestimate like your friendships too, because friends are obviously your best, who know you the best. So like everybody in here, you guys should all be talking to each other about work all the time, because you never know, like something's not going to be right for one person, but it'll be great for the other person.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing. And one other thing I thought about on the topic of networking. So part of, throughout the Thinkful curriculum, we encourage folks to, in our capstone projects, partner with businesses or whoever they can to work on content, work on social media. So now moving forward could be a great way for folks to gain portfolio experience, but what would you recommend as a polite message for that? Like say there's a mom and pop shop and they notice like social media is not so good. Maybe they want to help with that. What would be an enticing message or a good way for somebody to maybe go about that and position themselves as an expert that can help?
Yeah. Well, for one, you in this program, and that like if somebody came to me and I was like, hey, I just took this really fantastic program, like I have a certificate in digital marketing, blah, 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 like that, for one, offers you so much more credibility than just like anybody coming off the street and saying, hey, I can help you. If you go to a mom and pop shop and you say, hey, like I love your food, or I love your da 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 da, right? Like you just, again, be genuine, talk to them about why you're interested in helping them. And it can't just be about all business. Like it has to be that you have a genuine interest in the stuff that they create or that they sell. Because they have to trust you. If you're going to market their stuff, you have to build their trust. So, starting a conversation just like that and just being like, I love what you do, blah, blah, blah. I noticed that your social media has like X followers. This is what I do. I would love to help you grow your da da da. I find that like coming to people with not like a trial, but just like sending them a proposal off the bat is a lot less intimidating than, because I get messages like this all the time. People message me and they're like, I could help you grow your following. I'm like, you just wasted your one message to tell me that you could grow your following, but you didn't tell me how you're going to do it. Like, why am I going to like, I don't have the time. There's like 10 people messaging like this, but if you include like how you're going to do it, what you charge, and like have like a really good value prop in that initial message, I think it's much more beneficial for you and for them to know what everybody's kind of like offering and what everybody's getting into, because you don't have that much time to sell somebody. And if you spend that first message just being like, I'm a digital marketer, I can do this, that feels spammy to me. It feels super spammy. I get messages like that all the time and I'm like, I don't believe you. Like, why should I believe you? So come up with like an elevator pitch. That's really, really important. And run it by like your peers. Get like honest feedback about like, if I sent you this, would you be interested? Would you like what is your initial response? Like, do you feel like it's too spammy or too salesy? And if it is, then just go back to the table and try different tactics too, right? Like you're never going to know what's working until you just start doing it, and then you'll know what people are responding to. A/B test, right? Like that's for you learn how to A/B test as a skill. Just do it for yourself.
Awesome. I love it. Maybe that's something we can all challenge ourselves to do this week, right? We all have Instagram or Facebook. Let's hop on our social media and see what local businesses. I know, like for me in Sacramento, we have a lot of Instagram pages that promote our local clothing shops and bakeries and restaurants and bars. Let's hop on and see what those social medias look like and find a couple businesses that we can all, position ourselves like this with a value add and help them. It's a local business, a quick way for us to, try out these new skills and see if we can get some responses.
Yeah, and I have to add too, just that like right now is a weird time, right? To go to anybody and try to sell them anything. Like the businesses are struggling, and the last thing that businesses will neglect their marketing before they neglect anything else, because it's the thing that you cannot get like instant results on. You don't know if it's going to work. It's it's just a gamble. And so often like small businesses do neglect their marketing. So if you're willing to work for free. And I don't think most, like you shouldn't ever work for free if somebody's asking you to, but if you're willing to be like, hey, I would love to help, maybe just like put together social media strategy for them at like for free, then you do the social media strategy for free. You walk them through it. Don't share anything. Like don't give them the doc. Put it on, just hop on a call with them, share your screen, walk them through it. Really make them understand like why and how you're going to help their business. Think about like use cases where, hey, they're not going to want to pay you $600 up front for like a week, right? Or whatever. Like that's just a number I pulled out of my head. But can you like have like a tier pricing? Can you say like, I'm willing to build those social media strategies for free, and then we can do like a 1-month trial at like a 50% discount, like whatever, right? Like you get to just build a pricing that that feels fair to you, and that has like value for a business that's struggling. Think about it like that. Like you are also a business, so you have to think about your pricing model in a way that like is going to get you sales, because at the end of the day, your work is worth more. I can tell you that 100%. But like right now, people are struggling, so they're not going to be jumping to like spend hundreds and $1,000 on social media when they can be like, I'll get my kid to do it because that's kind of how it works with mom and pop shops.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
My name is Katya. By the way, everything you're sharing has been so helpful. It's such a fresh take. I've joined so many talks and they all say the same basic things that are common sense, but what you shared has made a huge impact. I just want to have a question about the strategy. So a lot of times I would make a strategy, like you said, come in to send a message and have something prepared. My question is, what are the limits? Because sometimes I make a strategy for a business and I spend so much time into it, but they just say no, or they say, oh, I'll think about it, and nothing happens, but I invested so much time and effort in the strategy, and it basically like I'm giving away my services for free.
Yeah.
Like maybe I should stop before that.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was like an easy answer for that, because it is so hard. This type of work, when you're a consultant, like people want to know that you are going to deliver, right? Like that's always, if you were in another person's shoes, like you might feel the same, right? Like I think that always helps make you feel, at least for me, help me feel a little less resentful whenever, I was like doing all this work and then somebody just turned me down. I'm like, okay, look, everybody's in their own situation right now. It is really hard, but how can I make this work for myself? I think that that's why I think having like having prices for your services, like static prices, is really important, because you at least know where to start. And if you have like a strategy, kind of like a structure format, like, for me, like a strategy always has like, well, what is this? How am I going to do it? What's the time period? What are the what's my goal? Like, what am I going to try to work towards? And if it's like, if you just have like an easy structure where you can kind of just tweak here and there, you'll also end up doing a little less work, which I think is always important, because I don't think it's fair for marketers to go out there and like be doing all this work and then somebody says they don't want to hire you. But there are ways for you to kind of make it into a turnkey operation where, like you have most of the work ready to go. So when you're like pitching people, you aren't doing a lot of the work from scratch. I think when people, to kind of like help you like make the sale, again, like don't send them everything, because if you send them everything, you've just given away your goods. And now they can be like, hey, look, somebody gave me a social media strategy. We just hired like my kid to do it for, I'll give them an allowance and they can just do it. Like, so remember, like that's like your proprietary work. Don't share it. Get them on a call, screen share if you want to screen share, walk them through it, get them on the phone, right? Whatever. Offer a free like 30-minute consultation. I think that is always like an easy opportunity for you to say, hey, like this is what I'm going to walk you through. Like let me share what I can do for you. and let's hop on a call, no like obligation after that. That's only 30 minutes of your time. And for them, it'll give them all the opportunity to talk to you in person, to build some trust, to really ask you questions. And then you can really try to make the sale, right? Like it's much easier to make the sale when you're talking to somebody versus when you send them something to an inbox and then they can be like, I'm like busy, right? Like I'm trying to get my place up like to COVID protocol right now. I don't have time to do this. So that's, I would recommend that. But just protect yourself, but like know that like this is a weird time, so you might have to make adjustments to the way you work in a way that you might not have before, and so that's I think the best way to do it. And then again, like just try to see what works. If you feel like 10 out of 10 times like no one has hired you, then go back to the drawing table and be like, okay, like what can I change?
Thank you so much. So you're saying basically make more a high level strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Second question, I'd really like to point about social media. I feel like people think that it's not good to show your social media, even if you have 10K followers, because it's unprofessional. And you made me think that that's actually what I do. I grow social media accounts. And if I just list them all out and say what I achieved in how many months with the numbers, that would impress you as a
so much. I mean, I'm telling you, when I was trying to hire a social media consultant, it was just slim pickings and I was just so disappointed. I was like, this is like, I feel like I feel like I'm a dinosaur. Like I like started on Instagram when it was, when it like launched in 2012. And like, I feel like I'm not a good, like, I don't know how to do that anymore because it's so hard. And I work at Facebook, but there are people who are really good at social media. And I'm like, if you tell me, look, this is the case study. Like I grew my social media in this many months by X, Y, Z. Like I created stories, I did this, blah, blah, blah. I grew it by 200% in 6 months. My following went up this much, my engagement went up, because the thing is Instagram gives you all these stats. Like you have all the information now. So if you pitched me on that, I would be like, okay, you like actually are telling me facts, right? You're not just telling me that you can grow my social media. Anybody can grow my social media. So yeah, like I can't believe people don't do that because it's such a missed opportunity. That's all.
It's just crazy how I've been thinking, oh, I don't have a professional agency experience. No one's going to hire me. But in reality, you just made me think how much freelance experience I have. I run my small social media agency in Miami.
Yeah.
And I can just showcase each of my clients' success. And that's just, you're amazing. Anyway, thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear that, because that to me, I think is like not a spoken about thing. And I've like talked to my social media friends, and we like, I have one really, my friend I told you that was the digital strategist who like worked with me in this initiative. She's like my one really good social media friend, and we always talk about this. Like it's so hard. She worked at an agency, and she was like, when I was trying to hire, it was really hard. People are not. And you know what it comes down to is people are not good at selling themselves. Like they're not telling their story. And so for me, I'm like, I'm a storyteller. That is what I do, right? Like that is my one big skill. I tell stories. So I need to tell my story really well. And that just requires like, it's a formula, right? Like it's not hard. It's just being confident, and then just like convincing somebody that you are the best person for the job. And you probably are the best person for the job, because I guarantee you're going to find jobs at like big companies. Don't tell anybody I told you guys this. Like I work at Facebook right now, and I'm like, wow, I'm a lot smarter than a lot of these people. And I really thought I was going to get to Facebook and there's going to be people that were going to blow me out of the water. And that's not really what it is. I think at the end of the day, like there are some people who are probably really good at interviewing. Then they get into their jobs, and I'm like, wow, you're pretty mediocre. Like I had to work really hard to get where I'm at, because whatever challenges I was up against. But it's really built up my confidence working at all these jobs and knowing that like often I'm actually a lot smarter than somebody who had that formal education or like, worked at 5 big tech companies and I'm like a startup vet. And I'm like, oh, you don't know how to do anything. You don't even know how to build a deck. What is this? So you're probably smarter than a lot of people. I can just tell you that right now.
And the last question, I promise. Were you obsessed at working at Facebook, or were you just accidentally turned out of Facebook? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
A little
that
bit.
is a really good question because I did actually. Tori recruited me last year for a contract gig, and I never thought I would work at Facebook. Like Facebook was not even on my radar. But I was like trying to get into big tech, right? Like I was like, if I could get into big tech, I know I can work anywhere. That's just how it is. Like now, people recruit me all the time because Tori recruited me for a marketing job. And I have to tell you, like it was not the job that they like told Tori they were hiring me for. Like I ended up working, I was like doing CMS work all day long. And that means I had to learn XML on the job. I learned a lot of HTML. I was doing project managing all day long. I didn't do any content. And she hired me for a content strategist role. And I was like, wow, this is really funny. But I made the most of it. And I networked while I was at Facebook. And I will say, and I didn't network in this old fashioned way that people talk to you about. I don't know if anybody here makes kombucha, but I made kombucha and I had these scobies to share. And on Facebook's platform, like, there's all these groups and stuff. So I like posted in one of the groups and I was like, hey, I have all these scobies to share. Anybody want some? And a number of people, wanted some. And this one girl is a content strategist in the role that I'm in. And I knew I was not going to get a full-time job at Facebook in the role that I was in because they had totally hired the wrong person for that job. Even though I was good at it, it was not content. So I caught up with this girl. I was like, hey, I just want to know what like content strategists actually do at Facebook. Do you want to have lunch? She's the nicest person, right? Like I couldn't have picked a better person to have lunch with because we were talking, I was telling her about what I do. And she was like, you would be really good at the role that I'm in. Like we do a lot of project managing. We work with a lot of difficult partners. We do a lot of CMS work, but we also write content. Like we also write. And happened to be there was a full-time job open. She referred me like that day. I sent her my resume. She referred me, and I got the job. So that is the way, like, right? Like I got in. I highly recommend this route because I don't know that I would have gotten a full-time job at Facebook otherwise. But once I was in as a contractor, I got a chance to learn like the culture at Facebook. I got to meet people. I got to have like understanding of, do I really want to be at this company? And then, I chose to like pursue it. But even last year, it's just because like I worked at Facebook as a contractor, I started getting recruited like crazy. So keep your LinkedIn on that option of always open to recruiters. If mine is on right now, even though I'm not looking, and always respond. I can't tell you this for sure, but I do think that on the back end of LinkedIn, they're probably if you guys ever on dating sites, like you can see like, oh, this person responds often or whatever. Like I have a feeling that they do that on LinkedIn because every time a recruiter messages me, I always say like, hey, thank you so much. Like I'm not interested right now, but let's stay in touch because you never know. And I always respond and I get recruited like crazy. So just, like again, like don't think that person is not going to get you a job because you just never know.
Awesome. I love that you share that story. Thank you. A lot of really great points from that. One thing I can speak to, yes, they do monitor it. I'm happy to share it with y'all, but I have some screenshots of it from the recruiter end. So for example, when I was searching for Foram, I can split up my search results by 3 categories: by all candidates, those that are open to new opportunities, and those that are likely to respond. Likely to respond means somebody that's active. So they're logging into LinkedIn and they're responding to messages. So it's giving me this pool and saying, do you want to message 500 people or do you want to message 15 people that are going to respond to your message and are a fit for your role? Well, guaranteed any recruiter is going to want to message someone who's going to respond, right? So have a good LinkedIn, be on LinkedIn, respond. All super important points.
Oh my God. I love that you just verified that for me today, because I have been going around like telling everybody this theory that, oh, if you respond, like I bet you're gonna get more responses. But like it just makes sense, right? Like when you work in tech, they all kind of work the same. And I definitely saw it help me. Like I always responded, and I'm like, this, it's like a never ending pool. People are always messaging me, and it's really nice because I like you guys, like you cannot bank on any one job, right? Like I don't know that I'm not going to get laid off tomorrow. But I'm not afraid if I do, because I know that like I have now a solid foundation of like my portfolio, my brand, and I know how to be a freelancer, and I like have like the right like strategies in place that I'll find work. And that of course is like optimistic thinking, because you can't guarantee that you'll find work. Like it's a really hard time to find work, but I'm in a better place to find work than a lot of people in my competition pool, just because I do all these like little bitty things to make myself more appealing to recruiters and hiring managers.
Awesome. I love it. And I know we are a little over time, so I apologize for everybody that we are going a little bit long. Sorry, but thank you for all for sticking with us. Does anybody have any final comments, questions before we wrap up?
Oh, I just have a quick question. So, I've been getting like a lot of like odd jobs of managing social media accounts. Like I've been getting them through Instagram. I just don't know how to display this work on my portfolio website. I'm like trying to put together my projects, and I just don't, like I've been putting my social media strategies that I put together and putting it on my portfolio website, but like I make like graphics and like digital content and stuff like that, so I just don't know how to.
Yeah. Can you share any of that? Like you said, you create graphics, right, for companies?
Yeah, I have some of them like on a slideshow on my website. One second, let me do that real quick. But I just like want to have it cohesive. And I was talking to Tori, and she's like, you should have it on your about page, like having work that you make like right when someone clicks on your portfolio link. And I don't know how to display it.
If you message me after this on LinkedIn, I will send you my friend's website, who is a social media consultant who's worked at agencies, and she's worked with clients like Airbnb and like big clients, and she has a really beautiful website. The way she portrays it, I can send you that. And Tori, I'll send it to you too if you want to just send around. Like I think that it's different, totally. Like it's different for me when I'm like trying to send that, like linking out work, than for somebody who's like trying to display creative work. But I've seen really great portfolios, and I would say that too, if you can like just Google after this, there's all these like websites that'll like curate all the best portfolios or something, right? Like get an idea. Wix is really good. I love Wix for like its customization options and stuff, and it's a super professional website. Like I pay the premium package, but I pay like $189 a year or something, right? Like, and that's, you can, I think, even write that off as if you're a freelancer, you can say like that's a business cost. Tax is a whole other thing, so I'm not even gonna get into that, but like it's worth it. That's like a business cost that's worth it. So if you message me after this on LinkedIn, or and Tori, I'll just send it to you too, just in case I miss it. I will send you her website to just get an idea of how she does it.
Okay, yeah, that'd be perfect. I've been like creeping on people on Instagram, like trying to figure out what they're putting on their portfolio websites, but a lot of people don't have websites. They just have Instagrams. Yeah.
I can't believe that. Because you know what? Like people are searching for social media strategists, right? Like, and you want to be able to come up in that search. That's crazy to me. I can't believe
Okay, cool.
think about it. Like you just create a website, you're already like 10, like you're already just like so much more prepared and more appealing to a recruiter than somebody who doesn't. I have to say, when I did create a website, my my response rates from like editors that I was pitching and like recruiters or just like clients went way up. People were like, oh, look at this girl, like she's got a website, right? Like, wouldn't you feel like that if somebody sent you a website and you're like, oh, she's got her shit together?
I know, it was like so much easier than I thought it would be, and I'm like, why doesn't everyone have a website? Like I did this in like 2 hours.
Doesn't matter. Don't worry. Yeah, don't worry about everybody else. If they don't have a website, that's good, because that means you're like already out of the game.
For sure. Thank you.
You don't have to tell everybody to have a website. Just keep that secret to yourself.
Awesome. Great questions, everyone. Thank you so much for those of you who've asked questions, participating. And of course, Forum, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to hang out with all of us and share all of your insight. I loved hearing it, and I know that everyone else really appreciated all of your insight as well.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I really I'm truly humbled that I could have shared anything helpful. And I wish you all the best. Please add me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to, I will respond and accept your invitations. Just tell me that you attended today, so that way I know who you are. And I'm happy to keep send jobs your way if you're looking yeah, use me as a resource. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Forum. Have a great Halloween weekend.
Oh, you too. Stay safe, everybody. Bye.
Bye, guys. See ya.